Okay, good Vach. Tonight is the anniversary of the passing of the Marash, who taught us that even when the world says you cannot go, only if you can't go under an obstacle, try to go over the obstacle. The Ramash says, I say go straight over. So usually we think about this idea of going straight over as having to do with obstacles from without, obstacles from within, to go press forward and not to pay attention to the things that get in our way of serving Hashem. But going straight over also means to go above our own selfish desires and to focus on what Hashem wants. The famous story of the Berditchev Rebbe. I believe it's Berditchev needed a esrog, and it was almost Sukkot. And he told his chassidim to stand on the streets, the outskirts of Berditchev, to try to find maybe someone traveling who had an esrog. And the chassidim are there looking for somebody, and unfortunately they're there for a long time. They can't find anybody with an esrog until finally one guy's passing by, and he says that yes, he has an esrog. So Rabbi Berditchev told him that he stay in Berditchev and spend sukkahs with them, because they only need an esrog, and if you do them a favor and hang out with them and stay with them for the yontif. So the man says doesn't want to stay with them because has been home in a long time, his family's waiting for him, and he really wants to go home. So the Rebbe and his chassidim, they offer him money. The Rebbe offers him various blessings. He's like, no, I need to go home. It's time to go home. So finally, the Rebbe says to him, if you stay here for Yontiv, I promise you, imim b'chitzasi, that when the time comes, you and I will be together in heaven. So that's something he couldn't refuse. Being with the Rebbe and Gan Eden, what a promise. He said, okay, I will stay. So he stayed in Berditchev, but the Berditchev Rebbe told his chassidim told everyone in town, quietly, secretly, that no one should let this man into their sukkah. So the night of sukkahs came, this guy is out of sukkah. So he didn't know what was going on. He went to one sukkah high. He just wanted to join your sukkah. No, you can't go stay in our sukkah. No one let him in the sukkah. He went from sukkah to sukkah, and nobody let him in. And finally, someone told him that the Berditchev Rebbe is the one who says that you can't go into our sukkah. The Berditchev Rebbe won't let me go into the sukkah. Why can't a Jew go into a sukkah? So he went to the Berditchev Rebbe himself, to his sukkah. He said, what is this? The Berditchev Rebbe says, I'll let you come in the sukkah on one condition. The condition is that you have to forgive the promise that I made to you. You have to absolve me from the promise I made to you. What was the promise? But we have to go be with the Berditchev Rebbe where? In Gan Eden. So he said, if you absolve me from the promise, then you can go into my sukkah. The guy was a little bit like, well, that doesn't seem fair. Now he's stuck in Berditchev for sukkahs, and I said, no problem. Let me be in the sukkah. I won't have Gan Eden. I won't be with you in Gan Eden. It's okay. So Berditchev Rebbe, after Yontif was over, he said to him, I want to now tell you that I'm going to fulfill my promise, and you will need to be with me in Gan Eden. Now he's really confused. Why did he first of all promise that he's going to have Gan Eden? Then why did he take away the promise? And then why did he give him the promise again back? What's going on? So the answer is like this. Berditchev Rebbe said to him that he wanted that this man should not just get this Gan Eden, this promise, for free. He wanted him to earn it. And when he had this opportunity of being in Gan Eden, and he gave that up for the sake of a mitzvah, of sitting in the sukkah, so then he deserved the Gan Eden. Not just he was given the Gan Eden as a gift with a business, but he wanted him to earn it. Didn't he want to think that you can get Gan Eden just by a gift, but you have to earn it, you have to work for it. So you see from the story a couple of things. In the fact that the Berditchev Rebbe promised him Gan Eden in exchange for a mitzvah, that's not such a hard thing to understand. The Berditchev Rebbe is a great tzaddik. And although in order to fulfill his promise, he would probably have to lose a lot of his heaven, what was in store for him in heaven to fulfill the promise, but he's a tzaddik. So the tzaddik gives up his heaven in order to be able to do a mitzvah. The real hero of the story is this man. This man gave up to be with the B'ditchev Rebbe in Gan Eden in order to do this mitzvah just one time. So it really tells us the power of a mitzvah, which is very in sync with this idea of chassidus, going beyond yourself, beyond your desires, and focusing what Hashem wants you to do. So in that spirit, I want to tell you a few stories of Rabbi Marash, more specifically about Rabbi Marash's chassidus. The Rabbi Marash once told his son that he had two visitors that came to him. From one of them he had a lot of pleasure, and the other gave him great pain. He says he was visited by a chassid named Elia Ebeler, and the Rabbi Marash asked this chassid, how are things going? So he tells the Rabbi Marash, and the Rabbi Marash asked him, how are you doing? You know what he responded? He said, there's a chassid in our town named Yosef. Yosef is a wagon driver, and he had such a hard time. We bought him a wagon, and unfortunately, anything that could go wrong went wrong. First, the horse died, and the wagon broke, and we got him something else, and everything is going bad for him. It's not working out for him. And he cried in front of the Rabbi Marash, and he said, please, Rabbi, bless him. The things should go better for him. So Rabbi Marash said, you say you can't do anything for him. You've done a lot for him. We have a tradition from the Baal Shem Tov that when a Jew has pain for another person's pain, and a Jew asks Hashem for another person's pain, he takes away from him any decrees against him in heaven. When a Jew feels bad for another person, and he asks Hashem, please have mercy on this other Jew, so Hashem takes away from him anything that's being said against him in Shemayim that he's deserving of anything negative, just by having pain for his pain, that takes away anything negative. Another occasion, the Marash said the same is also the opposite. The Baal Shem Tov says that when a Jew blesses another Jew and he's happy on the Jew's happiness, that's accepted by Hashem, like the prayers of Rabbi Shmuel, the Kohen Gadol, in the Beis HaMikdash on Yom Kippur. So anyways, Marash said to him, you could do a lot for him, and he gave him a coin. And he said to him, I want to be a partner with you. And Eli Ebeler is aghast, be a partner with me? Does Rebbe know who I am? He is, I am the chomer, I am the material. It says in Tanya, and the only way to rectify this kind of material is through breaking it. You certainly don't want to be a partner with me. That's who the Rebbe told his son, Rebbe Rashab. He had great pleasure from this chassid. On the other hand, another person who visited him did not bring him pleasure. He did not have any nachas. He had pain. And this man's name was the Mishnah Eliezer. Rosie, want to close the door of the kitchen? Thank you. The Mishnah Eliezer was a prominent rabbi, and when he visited the Rebbe Marash, the Rebbe Marash asked him, how are things going in your town? How are things how are things over there? So he told the Rebbe Marash, well, we learn a class together in Gemara, and we learn chassidus, and we daven. And Marash said, okay, what about character traits? How about the midas? How is the character traits being affected by the people in the town? Are they, in other words, you may be teaching them things, but are they learning something? Are they actually absorbing and learning and changing and being elevated in their behavior? He said they're like rich kids. Rich kids, in other words, they're like spoiled kids, and their kindness isn't the way they're not really, their behavior, in other words, leaves much to be desired. So Rebbe Marash said, the issue is with their teacher. Their teacher has to work with them, and if he would devote himself to them, they will be elevated. I want you to go back there. I want you to ask each of your students to give half of the money that they received as a dowry. Those days it was customary to get a dowry from the parents of the bride to help the young couple get started in their life. Tell them they should give half of their dowry to a fund, to a loan fund. In other words, they should make a loan fund for people who need loans, people who need to borrow money. Each person, every student of the class, every one of these young married people should give half of their money to this fund to lend tzedakah to others, to lend money to others. So the Mishnah Eliezer tells Rebbe Marash, he says, they're not going to listen to me. You're asking me to do something which is impossible. They're not going to say yes. The Rebbe Marash said, you should tell them that if the money if they will not give this money won't belong to them anyways. This money is meant to go for tzedakah, and if it won't go to tzedakah, they won't be able to use it for anything else anyways. And therefore, they should give the money where it's meant to be given for the sake of tzedakah. And then the Rebbe Marash said, next time you come, give me better news. That's what Rash told the Mishnah Eliezer, and that's what he meant when he said, doesn't have that from one person he had pleasure, from the first one, Rabbi Ebler, who had pain for his friend Rabbi Yosef, the Balagolo, Yosef, the wagon driver, and from the other one, he did not have so much pleasure from this great Goy, this great genius, Torah giant, was a rabbi. He didn't have pleasure from him. That was the story with Rabbi Elia Ebler and Mishnah Eliezer. But what I wanted to share tonight was a yechidus, a private audience that the Rebbe Marash had with his son Rebbe Rashab, in which he told him about two chassidim, and he made a clear contrast between these two chassidim, and for the purpose of telling us the kind of life that we need to live. He had one chassid whose name was Nehemiah Zalman from Nehemiah Zalman was from Shvinsian. Nehemiah Zalman was a incredible Torah giant. He was someone who learned from Rabbi Michal Apotzker. Michal Apotzker was a chassid who had divine inspiration. He was a great Torah genius, and every second of Nehemiah Zalman was used for the right purposes. He would serve Hashem with great strain and effort. Every morning, he would spend 6 hours preparing for davening, and with his towels over his shoulders, he would learn chassidus, preparing for davening, and then he would start davening every morning at 9 o'clock in the morning, and he would daven for 6 hours too. So he spent a good 12 hours on his davening, 6 hours preparing for davening, and 6 hours of davening. In the wintertime, he would daven mincha and ma'ir right after shacharis, and in the summertime he would go home, he would eat, rest for 2 hours, and then daven mincha and ma'ir. So he would literally spend his whole day serving Hashem in prayer and davening, and he never had to work because for many years he was supported by his father-in-law, and then the agreement was that his father-in-law would take care of him for 40 years, and afterwards his wife ran a store, so he never had to do any work by himself, to support himself. Instead, he spent all this time learning, and he was a great genius both in the revealed parts of Torah and the inner dimension of Torah. When he would visit, he loved solitude, he loved being alone, he loved to think and delve into a concept in chassidus especially. When he would visit the city of Lubavitch, he would do this special prayer that tzaddikim do called Tikkun Katzos. He would go to this riverbank where there was a little forest. He loved staying there and learning there and praying there, and spending so much time learning and praying and davening. And as he is there in the riverbank, there was a little hut, a little sukkah, sort of, and he would sit in that sukkah and he would just concentrate on chassidus. The Rebbe Marash said, that he told the Rebbe Rashab that he said, I would go to that riverbank just so that I could look at him, just so I could look at his face and see the way he thinks, the way he's totally divested of many material concerns, and he totally focused on thinking chassidus and torah. You just go to see him. He was such a prominent chassid of the Tzemach Tzedek that he was invited. He was the first person to be invited by Tzemach Tzedek to a special event. Tzemach Tzedek would have it once a year on Shavuos. He would have a special event where the top rabbis in the world would visit him, and they would discuss Torah. He would tell them about teaching chassidus, he would discuss learning, discuss deep Talmudic concepts. So the first one invited with this Rabbi Nehemiah Zalman. So he was an incredible servant of Hashem and using all of his time to serve Hashem. But said the Rebbe Marash to his son, the Rebbe Rashab, I want to tell you about someone else. Rabbi Yosef Hillel Droyer. Rabbi Yosef Hillel Droyer, he was educated by the Alter Rebbe's Chassidim. And he learned from the Alter Rebbe's Chassidim that the main thing in serving Hashem is helping other people. It's not about your personal achievements in the service of Hashem. The highest thing, most important thing is to help another person. So Rabbi Yosef Hillel, he took this to heart. He could have had a much better job with a much more comfortable livelihood if he would teach Torah to older people. but he specifically taught Torah to little children. Taught Torah to little children only because of what he learned from the older Chassidim of the Alter Rebbe, how life is all about giving and helping others. And so he spent 50 years teaching Torah to children. So the Rebbe Rash told the Rebbe Rashab that you have to compare and consider the difference between the Rabbi Nechemia Zalman and Rabbi Yosef Hill. On the one hand, Rabbi Nechemia Zalman is this incredible Torah genius. Every moment of his is spent serving God with the best of his ability, with sacrifice. On the other hand, the one who is fulfilling the intent, the purpose of why Hashem sent the soul to this world is Rabbi Yosef Hill. Because the soul didn't come down to this world just for its own perfection. The soul came to this world to help and inspire others. So, the Marash told the Rebbe Rashab about another chassid who did a similar thing to Rabbi Yosef Hill. He said Rabbi Yosef Hill, by the way, he was a Hasidic teacher of little children, and he planted into the hearts of these children a sense of reverence for Hashem, Yirah Shamayim, in such a way, said the Rebbe Marash, that all the winds in the world, that means whatever things going on in the world, it wouldn't take away from these people who were educated by Rabbi Yosef Hill their sense of fear of Hashem. It wouldn't weaken, not just it wouldn't take away, it wouldn't even, their sense of reverence for Hashem wouldn't be weakened at all by whatever happens in history to them, because of the strong roots that a Hasidic Melamed puts into a child. All the winds in the world cannot uproot the strong roots that are set into a child by a Hasidic Melamed. And such a teacher was Rabbi Yosef Hill. So for 50 years he was teaching little children. And he was fulfilling the intent of why the soul comes to this world. Unlike Nechemia Zalman. Nechemia Zalman was doing a lot of great things, but it was only for himself. However, Rabbi Yosef Hill, he fulfilled the intent of why the soul comes to this world, to give life to others. Then he told him about another guy. Another guy whose name was Rabbi Shmuel Chaim. Rabbi Shmuel Chaim was a rabbi who was sent to a very difficult position, sent to a position in the city of Lutzin. In Lutzin, there were a lot of people which were in a state of jealousy and fighting and discord, and a lot of hard times going on over there. And they came to Marash, asking the Marash, please send us a rabbi. So this Shmuel Chaim, who became the Lutzin, the rabbi of this town, he realized the difficulties of the town, but he didn't ignore the difficulties. He put his heart and mind to help people in this town, and he was successful. He had sacrificed to teach them the ways to have good character, and the Rebbe told the Rebbe Rashab, he and Rabbi Yosef Hill, they fulfilled the true intent of why the neshama, why the soul comes to this world. Many years later, the Rebbe Rashab repeated to his son, the previous Rebbe, this audience that he had with the Marash, and he explained to him in great detail how the difference between these two Chassidim is sort of like the difference between Rabbi Akiva and Avraham Avinu. Both Rabbi Akiva and Avraham Avinu were incredible scholars. Rabbi Akiva, we know the whole oral Torah we have is because of Rabbi Akiva. Avraham Avinu, he began the time period of Shnei Lafim Torah. It says in the Talmud that the world exists for 6,000 years, and the second set of 2 millennia is called the 2 millennia of Torah. The 2 millennia of Torah began with Avraham Avinu studying diligently the Torah. Besides studying Torah, Avram had sacrificed to spread godliness. And so did Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva was arrested for 10 years, Avraham Avinu was arrested, but there was a difference between Rabbi Akiva and Avraham Avinu. Rabbi Akiva, he looked for sacrifice. He looked for opportunity of ways that he can give to Hashem. When, at the end of his life, when the Romans were peeling his skin with the iron combs, his students were looking at him and he was smiling. They said, how can you smile in such pain? He said, my whole life I was waiting for a chance to fulfill the words of the Torah, to give my soul to Hashem. And now I can finally give my soul to Hashem. He was happy to be able to give his life to Hashem. But there's a difference. Rabbi Akiva looked for opportunity to give to Hashem. Avraham Avinu wasn't trying to hurt himself or to give of himself. He was trying to Avraham Avinu had a different intent entirely. Avraham Avinu's mission was to share Hashem to the world, to share godliness to the world, to inspire people to believe in Hashem. If he had to have sacrifice, he had sacrifice. But it wasn't about him. Rabbi Akiva was about his own his own service of Hashem. His service of Hashem should be in the most perfect way for Hashem. That's the way he served Hashem. So he liked having sacrifice. He enjoyed the sacrifice. But that was another way of him giving to Hashem. Avraham Avinu wasn't about him. So the Rebbe Rashab told the previous Rebbe, there are two major differences between Rabbi Akiva and Avraham Avinu, and these two Chassidim we're talking about, Rabbi Nechemia Zalman and the Rabbi Yosef Hillel. One difference is, Rabbi Nechemia Zalman is working for himself only. Rabbi Yosef Hillel is working for the community. Another difference is, when you're working for yourself, it's about you. When you're working for the community, it's about, you're pushing yourself on the side. That's like, you're being like Avraham Avinu. You're not thinking about what you're going to gain. You're thinking about what is the intent of Hashem. So, the Rebbe Rashab said prophetic words to the previous Rebbe about this subject. Unbelievable. He said, I want the students of my yeshiva, Yeshiva Tim Chatmimim, I want the students to be like Rabbi Yosef Hillel and Rabbi Shmuel Chaim. I want them to be like them, and so that, and he said, I'm muftach, I know for sure, I know for certain, that wherever they will go, then he said these words, and they will go everywhere to all countries. He said that, so many years ago in the city of Lubavitch, when Lubavitch was so small, he said, these students will go to all countries, and there will be a time, he said, when darkness will cover the earth, and yet through these students, the light of Hashem will shine to all these countries. That's what the Rebbe Rashab said. So wherever they will be, and they will be everywhere, said the Rebbe Rashab, they will receive the bracha of the Alter Rebbe. What's the bracha of the Alter Rebbe? The Alter Rebbe gave a blessing that Chassidim, wherever they are, they will be successful in spreading Torah and Judaism. And then the Rebbe Rashab said, the promise of the Alter Rebbe is stronger and stronger in every generation. Because in every generation, we have the additional prayers of the subsequent Rebbes. So the Alter Rebbe, the Middle Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, the Marash, the Rebbe Rashab, the Frierdiker Rebbe, our Rebbe, the Baal Shem Tov, the Maggid, their prayers are continuous for all their Chassidim to be successful in spreading Torah and Judaism and chassidus. And because we have the additional prayers of all the tzaddikim in every generation, therefore the blessing of the Alter Rebbe intensifies that Chassidim will be successful in spreading Torah and Judaism. And then the Rebbe Rashab said, the vessel to receive the blessing of the Alter Rebbe is to have Mesiras Nefesh, is to devote yourself entirely for the benefit of the community. To throw away your own personal self for the benefit of the other, and especially for the benefit of the community, not just the benefit of one individual, benefit of the Rabbah, benefit of the community. Another occasion, the previous Rebbe, the Rebbe Rashab, was at a meeting in Warsaw, and there was a group of people that were gathered together, ostensibly, I think, was for the purpose of raising funds for the Yeshiva Tim Chatmimim. So before they made the appeal, one of the members of one of the people that attended the meeting, a wealthy businessman, he said to those attending, he says, the yeshiva of Tim Chatmimim, this yeshiva has produced many rabbis and many shachtim. And Rebbe Rashab commented and he said, the purpose of the yeshiva, indeed, many rabbis and many shachtim were produced by this yeshiva, but the purpose of the yeshiva is not to have rabbis and shachtim. The purpose is to have soldaten and sebir, to have soldiers, that they should have this steadfast resolve to keep the Torah and its mitzvahs. Shortly after the yeshiva began and Stalin came to power and the yeshiva had to go underground, and there was such a dramatic change in the world, so it became impossible to keep Shabbos. And many very religious people who before Stalin came to power were keeping Shabbos, they said, the only way to survive is to work on Shabbos. But those educated in this yeshiva had a whole different perspective. Their perspective was that if it's not for the sake of Hashem, I'm not there. And somehow they were successful then to overcome the challenges that were brought about through Stalin and the subsequent many, many, many years of sacrifice. And these students of this yeshiva continue to be successful with the marching orders. The Rebbe Marash, l'chatchila riber. Chila riber again means the world says if there's no way out and you can't go over the obstacle, you can't avoid the obstacle, then try to go over it. The Rebbe Marash said, go straight over. I was once talking to my grandfather, Rabbi Fogelman, about this, and he said doing l'chatchila riber is difficult. I said, why is it difficult? If you're in a state of going over, you're like, like Avraham Avinu when he was going to the Akedah and he was like, I'm just going to go and not paying attention to the challenges. I'm focusing on Hashem and I'm focusing on the mission. When you're in that zone, isn't it easy? The grandfather says, well, once you're in that zone, it's easy. But you have to decide you want to be in that zone. You decide as soon as you wake up in the morning, decide that you realize the main reality, the true reality is Hashem. And therefore don't look at the difficulties, don't look at the hardship. When Avraham Avinu went to the Akedah, on the way to the Akedah, it was a huge river. And Avraham Avinu didn't know how to get past the river. You know what he did? He went into the river, and the river disappeared. It wasn't even real. It was the Satan, the Yetzer Hara, pretending that there was a river there. And so too the Rebbe says that when every Jew has to focus on what Hashem sends him to do, and not focus on the challenges, and just say this is what has to happen. It's going to happen. Through that, you overcome all the obstacles. Each of us shall overcome our obstacles. There are no obstacles. Go straight over. Because Jew is connected to Hashem. And this Sukkot, who should celebrate in Yerushalayim with Mashiach, the Simcha to Livav, with joy and gladness of heart. A good yontiv, a good vach.